EI today about Tom Brady looking at his options, and he decided Tampa was a better option. Why weren't the Patriots a better option for him when both Robert Kraft and Brady himself said over and over how much they wanted him to finish his career here?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not going to go back and rehash all that. We've talked about that. Really, my focus right now is on my focus is on the game here. And look, I have so much respect and appreciation for Tom and everything he did here, and for me and for our team. And we're just getting ready to compete against Tampa this week, and we're going to keep our focus on that.
But you talk about rehashing dynamics that you've already gone through. You've never done that.
Yeah, we made a statement when Tom left, and that covered it.
You surprised how well he's played? He's thrown 61 touchdown passes in 23 games down there. Won a Super Bowl.
Yeah, Tom's a great player. Nothing surprises me that he does.
Fair enough.
I've watched that video several times. That's the first time I noticed that it appears Bill Belichick is drinking from a can of soup. Hello, Tom Curran. Welcome in. Well done, by the way. Well done. I say this with no sarcasm or any degree of passive aggression. I thought that was excellent. Hey, Myles, butt out. Well done.
Thank
giving
you.
it to Bill Belichick, because that whole it's already been addressed nonsense. He plays that card all the time, even if it's never been addressed. That's his way of turning the page. It's already been addressed. No, it hasn't. You've never talked about it. I thought that was excellent.
And the reason it's important, guys, to do it in this instance is, look, this isn't Peyton Manning going to Denver after a neck surgery and Ryan Grigson moving on from him. This is the greatest sports franchise in NFL history in many people's, at least dynastic, not franchise, but dynastic run. It came to an end. The head coach hasn't spoken about it. The player has gone on to be unbelievably productive elsewhere, win a Super Bowl. We can't just let him say, I addressed it with a statement, or, we already talked about that, or, I'm looking at the game. This is football history, and nobody's more of a historian than Belichick. So for him to basically say, I'm not going to talk about it, is basically peeing on the intellectual curiosity of everybody who gives a damn about professional football and his team. So I knew he wasn't going to answer. I hoped he could, because it's not a difficult question to answer. But that's why I blurted that out. I didn't really mean to. I was like, all right.
Yeah. Well, and Tom, I mean, do you feel like there's regret on the part of the Patriots at this point, especially given how well he has played in the last year plus now?
I don't think that there's necessarily regret over having let Tom Brady go. I think that the regret would stem from decisions made prior to Brady leaving. For instance, the Patriots didn't provide Brady an option. Belichick primarily didn't provide Brady an appetizing option to stay. They didn't give him the 2 years guaranteed. They never gave him the extension. That's why the option that I was trying to pin Belichick down on was so insufficient. But the reason they didn't is because they had constructed their team in a certain way from really about 2015 on that was all in. And they did such a poor job in free agency and such a poor job drafting that they had to reboot. Had they done a better job in those areas, and yes, they were drafting late, but had they done a better job in those areas, then maybe they wouldn't have had to move on from Tom Brady. Maybe he would have been part of a good team. But right now, this team had to be completely store-bought because it was run aground personnel-wise.
Yeah, and look, it's not just a failure of drafting. I think it's a failure of development. That gets overlooked in this because it's not like they are drafting guys that people are saying, who the hell is that? I've got him in round 7, and they're taking him in round 1. I think Bill Belichick has a degree of impatience with young players, and he'd sooner plug in a veteran who knows what Belichick wants than take his time to teach a player who just doesn't get it. I think that impatience we see from him in press conferences spills over onto the practice field, and maybe he doesn't take as much time with certain young players as he should. Is there any merit to that?
Some, and I think he also has overestimated his coaching staff at times. Matt Patricia was not a great defensive coordinator. In his last 2 games, he got riddled by the Jacksonville Jaguars and then by the Philadelphia Eagles. He gets hired, he goes to Detroit and proves that he's not really that capable. Well, now he's back and he's part of the franchise. Right now, we don't know who the defensive coordinator is, but we know with all the parts, whether it's Gerard Mayo or Bill or Steve, they're not playing real well. Dante Scarnecchia is elsewhere. How much protection is there for Mac Jones? Look, there's been a lot of attrition on this team, but in the end, Bill makes the final decisions on personnel, and he makes the final decision on bringing in Antonio Brown or irritating Rob Gronkowski or grinding him down. And in the end, he has to be the one that's responsible for a roster that had to be completely rebuilt and overhauled. Tom Brady's numbers and dead money last year was $13.5 million. They just spent $160 in salary for this year, in guarantees, excuse me. So, I mean, he didn't have any kind of salary cap hold over them. That's why it's so disingenuous to pretend, nope, Tom just wanted to go to Tampa. We would have loved to have had him. No, you didn't.
So is this week in Tom Brady coming back and all the pomp and circumstance that, nationally we're making it out to be, is it as big of a deal, not as big of a deal, or a bigger deal locally?
Locally, it's a massive deal. But I think you'd be surprised to learn that there is a Brady fatigue that's gone on. And there will be not a small number of people who are in that stadium who will boo. I'm not saying it's going to be 30,000. I don't even know if it'll be 20. But I would say 5 to 10 have probably had enough of Tom Brady. Look, it was great that he won the Super Bowl. They're happy for him. They understand Bill's a hard guy to work for. But the success of Brady, coupled with his omnipresence and the fact that guys like, his dad or Alex Guerrero are not shy about pointing out that Bill could be a dink. All of it has Patriots fans a little fatigued. So it's a huge deal, but people just want the game to get here.
Well, there's nothing like the anonymity of a large crowd to empower people to boo, and it doesn't take much booing to drown out or at least be audible amid cheers. And that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And there's going to be several moments early, before the game, when he comes out of the tunnel, when he's on the field the first time, and also, Tom, when he sets the all-time passing yardage record. Do you know if they're planning to stop the game for that and give him the ever-important laminated sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper from David Baker?
The Drew Brees Memorial stop the game in week 17 ceremony? I don't know. I really don't. And here's the interesting thing. I think that both Bill and Tom want to high road the hell out of this. Tom Brady was mad about his dad's comments. Mad at me, mad at his dad, and he let it be known.
How do you know? How do you know?
How do you know? How do I know? How do I know? He let me know.
Did you get a phone call? You got a phone call? He emailed you? What did he say? What did he say?
He thought it was, you heard the comment he made to Jim Gray, the statement, tongue-in-cheek statement, but he didn't think that it was right for me to ask his dad to speak for him. So it was okay.
What did he have to say? Okay. Time out then. You know what's funny? He made the comment to Jim Gray about his dad. He hasn't said boo about what Alex Guerrero said, and I think what Alex Guerrero said is a hell of a lot more controversial because Guerrero knows how this guy feels about how he was treated by Bill Belichick, and for Guerrero to say that Bill Belichick never evolved and kept treating Tom Brady like he was 20 years old when he was in his 40s, that's straight from Tom Brady, in my view.
I don't think any of it, whether Tom Brady feels vindicated or whether he feels like Bill didn't evolve, I don't think any of it is a stretch to believe that Tom Brady feels that way. I think we would all be morons if we didn't think that Tom Brady, A, felt vindicated, or B, felt as if Bill didn't evolve. I mean, he's bristled at everything that Brady tried to do individually for TB12. Tom versus Time is a recitation of Bill not evolving and Tom's difficulties with it. What rankled Tom Brady was that he felt the timing was poor. Now, I don't know what his Guerrero feelings were, but I spoke to Alex last week, went down to Tampa to interview him, and Alex was on pins and needles, didn't know whether to poop or go blind. We can't have anything out there. It's going to be a problem. All right, fine. So he didn't want it out there. He didn't want to add to it. So the point I'm trying to make, Mike, and you are riled up, I could tell. You want more on this, so we can do more. But the point I'm trying to make is they don't want this. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Bill and Tom hugging at some point, pre-game or post-game, so that all of the dysfunction is pushed to the side.
It does seem like, I mean, because I was at Tom's press conference after the game in LA where they had just lost. And of course, they asked him about it because you got to ask him about it. And like you said, it seemed like he really wanted to take that high road and just kind of say, well, we are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's been a tough loss. And, we've got to go and we've got to play better. I have to play better and all these different things. So, I mean, I would assume that that's the approach that you feel like he's going to take for the rest of the week, no?
Yeah, he doesn't want to add to it. When it comes time to have all grievances fully aired with his name attached to them, I think he will pick that time. I think that time could come. I don't know if it definitely will, but I think it could come. But it's not going to come now. Mike, go ahead. You were riled up on the Guerrero stuff. Come on.
Well, no, I'm fine with that now. I've moved on because I also think that part of the psychology here, and we know with the Patriots, everything is a psychological battle. I believe that the Patriots regard Tom Brady as a player who is prone to maybe not being at his absolute best if he's feeling emotional. And I think that's going to cause the organization to do everything they can to be over the top, kind and charitable and emotional, and the video tributes.
I think it's a great read.
Everything calculated to get Tom the cyborg to act like a human being.
Just cutting onions at midfield. I mean, yeah, I think that's an awesome read by you, Mike. And I hadn't thought of that. That is the upside. Soften him. Make him, put his sword away. Don't turn it into the Red Wedding on us. We love you. That's a tremendous point.
Well, how do you think Mac Jones is going to handle all that? Because, I mean, even though we're talking about, we're talking about the fact that Brady's going to be doing this and this and that. But there's still a football game that they got to play. And Mac Jones is the quarterback who effectively has replaced Brady.
Yeah, that's an awesome question because when we look at it, so far Mac Jones has been so far from the problem for a Patriots offense, which has had its travails. They have not been good through 3 games. They benefited, quite frankly, from the inefficiencies of Zach Wilson in week 2. But Mac Jones has been under extreme duress, as you saw in that pick. And if they can't protect him, and Tampa does what Tampa does, well, if they are Tampa Bay, it's going to be 10-0 pretty quick if the Patriots play at the level they have been. And then you're going to put Mac Jones in a situation where he's dropping back 30, 40, 50 times. And he can't have that. He doesn't have the protection right now to withstand that. And he's going to get blasted around. So if this game gets out of control, I don't think that the fans will be as much after Mac as they would be after Bill. But there's potential for it to be an ugly night. And we could say, oh, well, he played in Alabama. That's pretty big stakes there. It's not Sunday Night Football. It's not the greatest coach of all time and the greatest quarterback of all time who's staring across. Look, if Brady wasn't a big fan of Jimmy Garoppolo being there, and he was a fan of the guy, he just wasn't a fan of the fact of Jimmy Garoppolo, how do you think he's going to look across the field to babyface Mac trying to do the job that everybody's saying that he's the next Brady? Not so good.
Boy, and that is going to be the strangest moment for Tom Brady because Sam Darnold told me that after week 1 when the Jets went to Carolina, and Darnold in his first game after only 3 years with the Jets had to look across the sideline during the national anthem. Brady, after 20 years, standing on the sideline at that stadium on the wrong sideline, in the wrong locker room, looking in the wrong direction at the flag, just everything that goes along with it. Tony Dungy made the point over the weekend that when he went back to Tampa the first time as coach of the Colts, he said all week, it's just another game, it's no big deal, no change, no difference. And then he got there and he realized, oh my gosh, this is very, very different. I just wonder if Tom's going to be able to process that and what kind of meditation, sports psychology, whatever he's doing this week to get his mind in a spot where he doesn't fall victim to the human reaction that any normal human being would have.
I think that really beginning on Friday, it would probably be a good idea if he started pulling the old, you probably remember this, Mike, because you're an avid reader. Remember what Brian Cox used to say, how he envisioned his opponents? and I'll send you the story later if you want to. It's a Sports Illustrated story from way back. But if Brady does the same thing, I wouldn't be surprised. He has to compartmentalize every emotion that you mentioned, any nostalgia, anything like that. And he has to look at the Patriots as the enemy, maybe not sworn enemy, and try and bring back, oh, he hosed me and made me move my business and my family and everything else, and I wanted to stay here. Or, oh, Robert Kraft never stepped in and saved it. But he has to hone his emotions to a point where there is no flagging and there is no impact on his focus. So I think it's a great observation by you that why not try and butter him up?
Like, just
stop
crazy
the game.
train.
Think about that. Just stop the game, bring out a podium, a big float and everything else. And Tom's like, I just want to play. No. You just broke the record. We're so proud of you.
Yeah, all those yards that you got here, man, they barely are any from Tampa Bay. We love you.
Right,
we love you.
Right.
Yeah, I can't imagine that that's going to, not be a big deal, at least in some aspect or other. But what about Gronk? I mean, we're all talking about Brady and everything that comes with Brady, but like Gronk is coming back too. Is there any emotional impact do you think that will have from any standpoint?
Well, Gronk, Belichick. And when we talk about irritation over departures, we can talk about Belichick maybe having any second thoughts about moving on from Brady. And I don't think he does. He's just too much of a pragmatist and says, look, this is the situation. This is what it was. This is what we did. I'm not going to go back to 2017 or 18. But with Gronk, just a genius move by him to get what he wanted. I mean, he retired, but he had a year left on his contract. He waited until the Patriots, if he came out of retirement, would have their cap blown up by his salary. Belichick goes, we're not going to trade you. We're not going to trade you to Tampa. We'll trade you wherever we want. Okay, then I won't report. Okay, well, then you're not going to play for anybody. But I'll come out of retirement and blow up your cap. So they finally just had to say, okay, fine. That made Belichick incensed. That was an irritation. So I don't think there's nearly as much tenderness towards 87.
Tom, I know you watch PFT Live every morning, so you already heard me say this earlier today. One of my strategies for how to get Tom off his game is to just have, at the right moment, into his field of vision, enter John Yastrzemski and Jim McNally. That would be beyond genius if they could set that up. The deflators, yes.
Dorito Dick and the deflator.
That's right. Have them show up. I know that won't happen, but that would definitely cause a reaction.
It would, but they would never, ever, ever do anything at the Patriots' behest. If Tom told them to jump, they'd both say how high, but the Patriots expunged them. Their bitterness toward the Patriots, or at least one of their bitternesses, is extreme.
But that's the long play. That's the genius of it.
That's the long play.
It was all a setup from 6 years ago. By the way,
with the Belichick hood on, and when he presents him that 8.5 by 11, it's Dorito Dink.
We've got to go to break. I will say this though, on behalf of all the monitors into which the peacock is now permanently embedded because of your neon sign on your one shot, thank you very much. Everyone's going to be heading to Walmart or Best Buy tonight to buy new TVs.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.